where to start. But what I will say, we are not giving away the base on Diego Garcia. This secures the base on Diego Garcia. And if there was not a problem with its operation and its future, why did his government start negotiations on it?
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will be aware that the Chinese have a smart city situated in Mauritius. So what safeguards are there in this deal to prevent Chinese installations on Diego Garcia, which could compromise the safety of Western naval security?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, the right honourable gentleman, for his question. We are absolutely clear that we will retain full control over Diego Garcia with robust provisions to keep adversaries out, including unrestricted access to and use of the base for the UK and the US, a buffer zone around Diego Garcia, a comprehensive mechanism to ensure no activity in the outer islands threatens base operations, and a ban on the presence of any foreign security forces. So I can absolutely assure him that the provisions are in place to defend the security of that critical base.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel.
Thank you. The Foreign Secretary has proudly said that his Chagos surrender plan was a good deal and told the Foreign Affairs Committee in November that it was a very good deal, and he was confident that the Mauritians are still sure about that, and that was back in November. 3 weeks ago, the Prime Minister of Mauritius told his National Assembly that since his election, he concluded the deal was so bad, we said no way, and that he had extracted more concessions from the UK on the length of the lease, extension on sovereignty and, Mr. Speaker, the costs. So can the Minister confirm that changes have been made since that announcement of the deal on the 3rd of October last year? And does he disagree with the account given by the Prime Minister of Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, the fundamentals of the deal remain the same and the overall quantum remains unchanged.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 7, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We condemn the Taliban's appalling treatment of women and girls in Afghanistan. The Taliban must reverse their barbaric decrees, and we keep working hard with international partners to maintain collective pressure.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cruelty and inhumanity of the Taliban should appall us all, and no doubt we do all condemn the ban on medical training. The UK has provided significant levels of aid to Afghanistan to support the health of women and babies, but with the Taliban now undermining women's health as well as their rights, what will happen to these aid programmes and funds, and what actions can be taken by us to put pressure on the Taliban to reverse their decision?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And she's absolutely right that the Taliban have been undermining so much of women's lives and that of girls as well in Afghanistan. We are determined to support girls in Afghanistan. That includes when it comes to education. I've directly discussed this with the Aga Khan Foundation to ensure that that support is getting directly to girls. But we also need to push hard politically as well. And I was very pleased, Mr. Speaker, to be able to announce that the UK is politically supporting the initiative to refer Afghanistan to the International Court of Justice for violations of CEDAW. Thank you.
Shadow Minister Wendy Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The treatment of women and girls by the Taliban is disgusting, and pressure must be exerted in response. The Minister will know there are concerns about the future protections of rights for women and girls and other minorities in Syria too, given the ideology of HGS. Ministers have issued a statement on the future of the UK sanctions on Syria, so can she provide details on the measures that need to be put in place in Syria as well to protect these rights, and whether issues such as this will be tied to future decisions on sanctions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable Lady for her question and indeed her passion around these issues of the protection of women and girls. Those issues around the protection of women and girls and indeed religious and ethnic minorities have been at the core of the UK's engagement with the Syrian authorities. They were at the core of the interventions that I made at the conference on Syria in Paris that I attended just a few days ago, and they are also, of course, very important when it comes to the changes around sanctions that my right honourable friend set out. Thank you.
Freddie Van Breelden.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, myself and the Minister of the Cabinet Office are engaging extensively with European counterparts. This includes the Prime Minister's first attendance at a European Council since Brexit. We are working closely with European allies, calling for increased defence spending and support for Ukraine, and the deeper engagement has already delivered results on growth and security, including a landmark defence and migration agreement with Germany.
Freddie Van Breelden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Thames Valley is one of the most important economic zones of this country. At a recent meeting I held with the business leaders of the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, the overwhelming message was that Brexit has been a disaster for business and Boris Johnson and the Tories did them dirty. Will the Minister commit to correcting that wrong and start negotiations to join a customs union with the European Union?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've been very clear that we do not seek to rejoin the customs union, but I will be clear that our cooperation is already delivering results, particularly in relation to growth and business. We recently secured a £250 million cheque investment in Rolls-Royce small modular nuclear reactors, a further £600 million investment by Polish firm Inpost into their UK operations, and we've also signed deals on migration, as I said, with Serbia, Kosovo, Slovenia and Slovakia.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine are underway, whatever your opinion of them is. But the eager eye of Putin may now look to other former Soviet countries like the Baltic states. I was in Estonia a couple of weeks ago. The distance between the Russian border and the Russian-held Kaliningrad territory is just 300 miles. For context, that's roughly what I travel every week to Plymouth from here. So what steps is the government taking to deter the Russians from looking at that possible future military action there?
Well, as I said, Mr. Speaker, security is absolutely at the heart of our engagement with European counterparts, and the UK's commitment to the Baltic states' security is ironclad. We're helping to uphold the region's security through our NATO forward land forces deployment in Estonia. The Prime Minister met Jeff leaders in Tallinn in December to discuss closer cooperation in response not only to conventional threats and Russian aggression, but also hybrid threats, and of course our work together on Ukraine. And I've visited that border myself. I've met our enhanced forward presence troops there. They're doing an absolutely excellent job, and it is crucial that we stand with our Baltic neighbours and all of Europe in our collective security.
Wendy Morton, Shadow Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the UK can be proud of the leadership shown in supporting Ukraine and rallying our international partners around this cause. I'd like to ask the Minister if he can tell us what work he's leading with European allies on unfreezing sanctioned assets to equip Ukraine, and what his timeframe is for releasing critical sanctioned funds to strengthen Europe's defence of our values, security and defence.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. She knows the important work we've already done working with European partners to secure that extraordinary revenue acceleration loan that will make a tangible difference to Ukraine. We continue to work with European partners on sanctions, and of course we're considering all lawful options forward. We've had important discussions in the Weimar Group and through the G7, and we'll continue to look at all options to support Ukraine with European counterparts.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Colin Miller.
Mr. Speaker, it was shocking yesterday to see the United States vote with the despots of North Korea, Belarus and Russia against a UN resolution proposed by the UK and other European democracies. Liberal Democrats want to see the UK lead in Europe against Putin's war on Ukraine. So we were pleased to hear the Foreign Secretary yesterday say that he was taking forward our Liberal Democrat proposal that the £40 billion of frozen Russian assets held in European central banks should be seized and given to Ukraine. Can the Minister confirm the Foreign Secretary will push the US administration to join this initiative when he visits Washington later this week?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm genuinely glad of the continued cross-party cooperation on Ukraine, as we saw in the Foreign Secretary's statement yesterday, and of course that includes getting important resources. I'm not quite sure it was a Liberal Democrat proposal, but I think there's a united front across this House to get Ukraine the resources that it needs. We will continue to work with European counterparts in support of Ukraine in the United Nations, across Europe, through NATO, and through all means that we can support them militarily, economically and diplomatically.
Number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Who wants it? Minister, well done.
Mr. Speaker, apologies. I'm answering a lot of questions today. On the question of Georgia, Mr. Speaker, I have significant concerns about the Georgian authorities' violent crackdown on peaceful demonstrators and indeed journalists. It's completely unacceptable. And in response, we have suspended programme support to the Georgian government. We've restricted defence cooperation and we've limited engagement with Georgian Dream. We've imposed visa bans and sanctions on some of those responsible for the violence. And we continue to work with international partners to support a free and open civil society and media in Georgia.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, last month at the Council of Europe, I met several Georgian opposition members. They showed me graphic evidence of the brutal physical abuse meted out at the hands of the Georgian regime before, during and since the recent parliamentary elections. Bidzina Ivanishvili, the Putin-backed oligarch and de facto ruler of Georgia, continues to suppress peaceful process using an identical modus operandi that is used in Russia.